Council.
Good evening. Please remain standing for just a moment. I would like to hold a minute's silence in light of the tragic event in Stowe last Saturday. There will be a march on Saturday the 3rd of September, which will meet at the Stowe at 4 p.m. and the Harlow community is invited to take part. Please try to attend. We will now begin the minute's silence. Thank you. Please sit down. Apologies for absence. No, thank you. Johnson, apologies for absence.
Sorry, Chair. Councillor Berry.
And I can see the UKIP people are all there. Thank you. Declarations of interest. Any declarations of interest? None. Will you move then to the first item?
Motion. Yes, I'd like to move the motion that's been tabled. I should point out that the one that has been circulated at this meeting is slightly amended and that was published with the draft notice of this meeting. I think I'll just start by saying this is probably one of the most important...
We need it seconded.
Sorry.
Seconded. Thank you. Please continue.
This is probably one of the most important council meetings that members will consider, both in terms of this motion and the motion that is to follow, because it will certainly set the nature and direction of the town for many years to come. I noticed there's a plaque just outside of the Water Gardens here with a quote from Sir Freddie Gibbard. I want to start by reading what it says. And Freddie Gibbard described the town, Harlow, as an organisation which would go on changing and being rebuilt as the needs of people altered. So this motion, around Junction 7A, is a recognition that since the original Gibbard design, while we absolutely adhere to the core principles, a number of things have changed. The motion is in a number of parts. I absolutely accept and agree with the aspiration that a northern bypass is the preferred route. However, this is tempered with a degree of realism about both the cost and the likely timeframes for achieving that northern bypass. So since Essex County Council submitted their original plans some time ago, there has been a recognition both of mitigating some specific impacts on local roads in the Gildon Way area, but also making specific provision in the plans for a future northern bypass. Again, repeating that is likely to be some considerable time in the future, and certainly outside of the local plan period, which we're going to consider a little bit more detail later. This motion is not about either Junction 7A or Junction 7. It's a recognition that Harlow needs both to meet the housing growth and the economic growth. But also, and this is a really important point, a new junction on the M11 is required for resilience of the network. Harlow is quite unusual in only having one access to the strategic road network. And I'm not claiming that Junction 7A will solve all problems on incidents in and around the M11 or the M25, but it will provide an alternative access to the strategic motorway network. And the final thing I'll say, just in terms of introduction, which is about items D and E, is around sequencing and priority. So I'll start by just repeating this is not about either a new Junction 7A or improving the capacity at Junction 7. It is about both. But this motion seeks to recognise the importance of sequencing them in this way. By doing Junction 7A first of all, you will avoid constructing major roadworks and disruption on the only access to the motorway network if you just do Junction 7 on its own. But secondly, it will provide some relief for Junction 7 itself. Yes, it will divert some traffic, and I know there have been some objections from residents of Old Harlow, but it will provide some diversion. So this motion recognises that there is a genuine need to support the aspirations for growth, for jobs, and the supporting infrastructure of a new junction. That it should be done first, before the improvements to the capacity at Junction 7. But also, if for whatever reason Junction 7A didn't go ahead, that will be conditional on the funding reverting to improving the capacity at Junction 7. So I'll pause there, Chair, in terms of my remarks.
Councillor Johnson.
Madam Chairman, I formally second the motion but reserve my right to speak at a later point in the debate.
Thank you. Councillor Charles.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'd like to propose an amendment. If it would be helpful to the Chair, I can read it out, or would you like to take it as read?
I think this is a very confusing issue. Please read it out.
Thank you, Chair. The amendment to Junction 7A that I will be proposing reads as follows. We believe that the plan to connect M11 Junction 7A to Harlow via an upgraded Gilded Way should be abandoned, and that an alternative proposal to achieve improved road infrastructure for the town should be considered. Full Council is asked to consider the following amendment to replace the motion in its entirety. The proposed amendment. This Council calls on Essex County Council to change its current approach and to A. Locate the proposed new M11 Junction 7A closer to Shearing, with a dual carriageway northern bypass connection to the A414 at Eastwick. B. Work with Harlow Council and Hertfordshire County Council to build a business case for the northern bypass as in A above. C. Ensure that a decision and funding for a new M11 Junction 7A and northern bypass are in place before major works to improve M11 Junction 7 are commenced in a timescale that doesn't put the funding for M11 Junction 7 at risk.
Someone second that. Thank you, Councillor
Madam Chairman,
Jarvis.
second, and I reserve my right to speak.
Thank you. Yes, Councillor.
Madam Chairman, tonight I'm proposing an amendment to the original Junction 7A motion so that full Council has an opportunity to send a message that it will not look at a short-term fix but invest in a long-term road infrastructure programme that will benefit the whole of our town. Even Essex County Council recognise the limitations of the Junction 7A proposal. Rodney Bass, Cabinet Member for Infrastructure, has publicly said that Junction 7A is a suboptimal route and that a northern bypass would be a long-term solution to resolve congestion in this strategic corridor of the east of England. We all know that the real prospect of substantial housing development to the north of Harlow will place pressure on the A414. In my view, both Essex and Hertfordshire need to come up with a credible plan to deal with this issue now. I disagree with highways officials that a northern bypass will not be needed for the next 30 years. Road congestion is building across the town, and our local network is struggling at peak times to cope. The urgency to build more homes quickly will inevitably speed up development timescales. This has not been factored into the decision-making process. Arguments for Junction 7A via Gildon Way do not stack up in my mind. Essex County Council's own traffic forecasts predicts a 71% increase in traffic flows on Gildon Way if a Junction 7A is built. There are only limited plans to upgrade Gildon Way, so the impact of this increased traffic flow is going to have a major impact on Old Harlow and the surrounding wards. To me, Junction 7A is a sticking plaster that will not deal with the rising tide of car ownership in Harlow. This amendment allows a pause so that the implications for building on the Greenbelt can be properly looked at. By moving Junction 7A closer to Shearing, we can look at avoiding woodland and areas of natural environment that have not been disturbed for decades. Councillors, we have a unique opportunity to influence a long-term solution to Harlow's traffic congestion problems by pushing Essex County Council to think again by supporting this new motion. The amendment is also designed to complement the work that is necessary at Junction 7. It is important that the work is carried out to the existing junction and that the funding is not jeopardised. We are setting Essex County Council a challenge to urgently build a case for a new junction on the M11 that is connected to a northern bypass at the A414 at Eastwick. This is by no means an easy task to deliver, and I recognise that. But major infrastructure work has and always will be a significant undertaking. There is a large cost implication associated with the construction of a new M11 junction dualed to a northern bypass, and it would be wrong of me to ignore that. I am attempting to achieve a far better balance by encouraging Essex and Hertfordshire County Council to work with the government to build a case that works in the best interests of residents. This is a difficult decision for councillors. I believe this amendment unlocks greater future prosperity for our town. Where there is a balance that needs to be struck, we will achieve that through a northern bypass. So I urge councillors, support this motion tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I think there's a lot of merit in what Councillor Charles has said, and I will be not supporting the main resolution. I will be abstaining on Councillor Charles's resolution, and I would like to say why. The public are being poorly served by these proposals. They have been subjected to public consultation continuously, not just in Old Harlow, but throughout the town and throughout the surrounding villages and so on. And people have categorically turned these proposals down time and time and time again, and they are completely ignored by Essex County Council. We are in a position to actually tell Essex that we do not want Junction 7A. Why don't we want it? Basically, two reasons. First of all, the amount of traffic that will be generated on Gildon Way at 71%, when you actually, I leave for county council meetings, and I just see the stream of traffic jam way back into Shearing every morning, to actually think that that road would actually cope with even more traffic at critical periods is just quite crazy. And the second thing I think that will serve the public of Harlow very poorly is the thousands of people every day who try to get out of Harlow to go to work, and the thousands of people who try to get into Harlow to go to work. We are going to be gambling with those people's lives day in and day out if we believe that £34 million should be transferred, which is in concrete, in the next 5 years, which Highways England have come up with independently and are prepared to spend on the actual reform of Junction 7, and they are plausible plans which will actually get that junction moving again. To actually let those people down as well, and to think that this project, Essex County Council is actually saying, will cost £68 million. People are saying, oh, well, perhaps they won't put the spur in and so on, perhaps they won't do this. And at the end of the day, Essex County Council is saying that project cost £68 million. There's £34 million on the table. The MP is all over the place. One time he says, move the money. The next moment he says, split the money evenly between the junctions. That won't work either. In those particular terms, we need to be absolutely clear. If we pass this resolution tonight, we'll actually be sending the wrong signals to the Cabinet meeting in a couple of weeks' time at Chelmsford. It's within our power to say no to this and to actually support our public. We are elected as town councillors, not just for wards, but for town. And we need to actually think is what is in the best interest of the majority of people in this town, and it is not Junction 7A. I cannot unfortunately support the amendment, however, because that actually calls on priorities being given to the bypass. The bypass is very necessary, but nobody's actually going to come up with that money. So at the moment, the priority is actually to get Junction 7 moving and to abandon this vanity project from Essex of 7A. The last thing I'd say, Chair, is that lots of people actually talk about necessity for the business park to thrive. Well, if you actually look at all the documentation that's been drawn to my attention, that is not the case. In the documentation about the business park, it actually says that it should be self-sustainable at one stage. And if the buildings go ahead at places like Newhall, then in those circumstances, people can simply walk to work. And people will be attracted to that in this day and age. So in those circumstances, I think that's really a misnomer. The business park will go ahead whether in fact there's Junction 7A or not. So to summarise, Chair, let's avoid public misery in Old Harlow, divide the community of Churchgate Street and the rest of the community, make it impossible for those people to get out onto Gilden Way, and Gilden Way itself actually being clogged up at the most important times. And let's do justice to the motorists who both come into this town and leave this town at the critical times of the morning and the afternoon and the rush hour when it's vital that junction actually gets changed properly. Let's gamble with people's lives. Let's stay to the status quo and tell Essex to get their act together. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I rise as the Cabinet Member for Regeneration and Enterprise, and I have to say wholeheartedly, I want 7A, and I want it now. Because we have been in this chamber so many times, so many years, having so many discussions and getting nowhere. I sit on Junction 7 every day, going to work and coming back to work, and I know the absolute misery that hundreds upon hundreds of local people who are committed to this town suffer on the basis that we can't get in and we can't get out of this town. And now is the time to make that change, and that is our opportunity over this one. How long have we waited for this moment is too long. How long do we have to stand still on Junction 7? Hopefully not for much longer. This is a key moment. This council tonight will set a precedent by actually making a very clear and substantive noise to the wider community, not only in Harlow to Essex, but we are open for business and we want to be open for business. This is our legacy, and we should be proud and brave enough to stand up and talk about the whole of Harlow, not just the bits of Harlow about this. This is our growth opportunity. This is our economic opportunity. This is our attitude opportunity, because we will be sending out that message. Tonight is not about them and us, it's about inspiration and it's about aspiration. Do we believe in the Gibbard principles of what the new town should be? Should we always be striving to make the current community better and let the future be better for the wider people coming into this town over this? And even though I fully respect those people who are against it, I can say this debate is not about the enterprise zone. Enterprise zone will be successful regardless of this, but it's not just about the enterprise zone. We cannot just narrow it down. It's the wider business community that the enterprise zone will bring in and will attract. And because of our location with near Stansted in London, we have got to get a second junction to enable the ebb and flow of people and businesses in and out of this area. We're a new town, and we have to remember we're a new town, and we should always be looking forward. I would say, however, I do agree in principle to the concerns of that local community. And even though I am supporting this wholeheartedly, we have to absolutely ensure that that community is properly engaged, properly informed, and that they have the right to know any impact that this may have on their times. Because I have to say, even though I'm against what they're saying, they have acted in a very respectful, very honourable way in putting their cases forward to the wider community, both speaking and on social media. And it would be disrespectful for us not to accept their concerns, but note their concerns, and let's move together with one voice, one united way, for a Junction 7A, which will be our lasting legacy for this community. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think we're in for an interesting night tonight. But I think sometimes, well, someone must have speakers. I think we have to take a deep breath and think about what our aspirations were, where we've come from, what we wanted, and more importantly, what the town wanted. This actual debate about this junction on the M11 actually started across the town centre in the old town. It actually started in the last millennium, because I actually was a councillor in the last millennium, and I know quite a few other people here was as well. It goes back a long, long way. And I think we need to actually think back to what our aspiration was. Our aspiration was a northern bypass to take the gridlock traffic away from Harlow. Our aspiration, which is in the next agenda item, was to have the growth of Harlow towards the north of the town. So the two items met as one entity and one aspiration. Well, unlike Councillor Birkin, I don't travel up to the motorway back and forwards all day. I actually work in Harlow. I work on Edinburgh Way, and which is obviously the main 414. So I see the gridlock 8 hours a day whilst I'm at work, see the misery that it causes people trying to commute, people trying to get to work and back, and I really understand the issues there. We wanted, all those years ago, was the A10 kind of 414 corridor to come away from Harlow, because at the moment it takes a shortcut through Harlow to get onto the M11 and go down to the M11 corridor. The idea and aspiration was to take a northern bypass to stop the misery of traffic in Harlow. That was what we wanted, that is what I supported, and I honestly believe that's what the town actually wants. Some arguments here tonight from colleagues across the floor just don't add up to me. I can't understand how having an additional junction 2 miles from the existing junction is going to relieve the gridlock in this town. When the motorways have a problem and they all get piled off the motorway and come into Harlow, it causes absolute mayhem for all residents in this town. Having another junction that then comes straight into the middle of town is not going to relieve that gridlock. It's just going to delay it by 5 minutes. That is the real reality of what a junction 2 miles away is going to bring us. I do support certainly most of the sentiments in Councillor Charles' amendment. But I'm very, very like-minded with Councillor Danvers about item C. Item C gives me a real problem, because I think we really need to concentrate on Junction 7 as a priority for the misery that causes. And you can see what other junctions have done further up the M11 and they relieve the issues within their own town. But getting back to junction 7A, I think we should form our case for a northern bypass and state our case for growth towards the north. They're two linked items, which is what I think what I wanted, and I honestly believe it's what the town wanted. Thank you.
Councillor Wilkinson's talking about the misery of the people on the going up to junction 7. But is it right to put one person's misery onto somebody else? Because that's what's happening here. That if you take it away from somewhere else, junction 7, and you put it to Gildon Way, then you're causing misery to thousands of more people. And that seems to me unjust and unnecessary when there is alternatives. Anyway, I'll get back to my own speech. I'm speaking in favour of the main, I'm speaking in favour of the amendment to the main motion. Let's get it right. The question is, does Harlow need a second junction off the M11? Undoubtedly we do. In order to facilitate the growth agenda, I'm not against growth. On the contrary, I'm all in favour of growth, but we must manage this properly, avoiding major impact on residents and their ability to go about their daily lives. However, should we be spending 60 million of taxpayers' money on increasing the misery and congestion of thousands of Harlow residents? The answer to that is a very definitive no. Despite all that Essex Highways have said and hoped you would believe, they've tried to prove otherwise. Major congestion will result in the current and only proposals brought forward by them. Why have they not brought forward alternative schemes? All they say is we cannot afford the office scheme. That's not just good enough. We now have to get a cheaper scheme that will be totally not fit for purpose. I've lived in Harlow for the best part of 30 years and have seen firsthand the daily congestion along Gildon Way. For Essex Highways to say that by fiddling around with left turns and 3 lanes, one of which was known to cause multiple accidents, so they were no longer built, little or no congestion will occur as a result of this scheme, this is Essex Highways saying, is somewhat less than truthful. How will building 1,100 new homes and increasing traffic movements by 70%, or to be accurate 71%, on Gildon Way not have a major impact and, more importantly, an adverse effect on the residents of Old Harlow and Churchgate Street? These two areas of Harlow will be ruined, cut off. What a disastrous effect this scheme will have on the lives and well-being of all the residents. And what about the children who attend the 2 schools adjoining Gildon Way? One primary, Fulbert Barnard, and one secondary, Mark Hall. Over 1,500 pupils sitting in classrooms, breathing in diesel and petrol fumes from the cars and lorries stationary outside their school. Pollution will be a major factor, and this scheme blighting the lives of many people, both young and old. Why should residents have to live with 24/7 traffic noise along this small country road? Gildon Way is totally unfit now and will still be, even with these so-called improvements. It will never be able to cope with the proposed volume of cars and lorries. The argument for this scheme is that it's needed to cope with the extra traffic that will be generated by the enterprise zone. The main enterprise zone is south of Gildon Way and closer to junction 7. To ask yourself, why would the cars and lorries queue to get onto the 414 to go north and then struggle along Gildon Way when they've got access to junction 7 and the M11? Some suggest that traffic from the Pinnacles will be attracted along Edinburgh Way and Elizabeth Way. Unfortunately, large lorries, Poundland, could not negotiate the Queensgate roundabout, so they will continue to junction 7 along Southern Ways as now. There are other major problems. Residents from Newhall and Church Langley who want to go up to Old Harlow for either shopping or the doctors will no longer be able to go along London Road, and this will be blocked off. To avoid a rat run, so they have to go along the new road, currently under construction, from London Road to the 414, down to Markhill, round the roundabout into Gildon Way and then into Old Harlow. Old Harlow will slowly die as people will not bother with this route. Madam Chairman, members, there is already existence a road, the A414. This could be upgraded along with improvements to junction 7, where monies have already been allocated, which will see us progress until such time as we can build the northern bypass, which is the only true way of dealing with Harlow's traffic problems. Members, for the sake of our children and grandchildren, I implore you to reject the original motion and support this amendment. Only then will we be able to say we acted with compassion and common sense. Thank you.
Councillor Pryor, please.
Madam Chairman, firstly, on behalf of the UKIP Council Group and Harlow UKIP branch, let me give our condolences to the family who lost a member and totally condemn any type of violence. The individuals must be brought to justice. Now onto the subject of the 7A junction onto the M11. We will be supporting the amendment and opposing the original motion. Even though it's agreed that we need a new junction, the plans proposed in this motion are totally unacceptable. Many residents have shown that they are against these plans, and they have made them quite clear in consultations undertaken. I have heard many councillors on both sides of the chamber disagree with the proposals, and it will be interesting if they now stand up for their residents and vote these plans. Imagine the chaos of roadworks and accidents, especially with single lane provision. A more free-flowing network, take the candle of what I've just said, this scheme is the epitome of not free-flowing, with designing multiple stopping points. An improved environment, the large increase in traffic will cause a major rise in noise and air pollution in existing residential, new residential and school areas, many actually bordering the route. The stop-start points will further increase pollution by emissions. This will be a severe detriment to the health of local people. The major factor is the health of our children. Essex County Council has not yet published the true noise and pollution effects. Until they are available, then we should stop any further discussions on this and oppose the original motion. It will impact on schools, as stated earlier, and that will impact on the health of those children. Do we want to be the council that accept this? I will vote against the original motion and for the amendment. This will represent the views and residents of our town. I wonder how many members opposite will represent the residents and vote against this original motion. This is another occasion when the actions of members in this chamber will be the proof that they listen to and represent their residents. We will be accepting and supporting the amendment. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Whilst I agree with the old Harlow councillors that junction 7A would be far better as a northern bypass, my worry is that at the cost of 300 million as against 50, a northern bypass won't happen. Due to that cost, if we turn down junction 7A, we'll probably end up with nothing at all. My residents who board a Southern Way would find this totally unacceptable. The Highway Agency have said that junction 7 is already well over capacity and another outlet is vital. My part of the town includes Southern Way with its 13 roundabouts, 11 of which are mini roundabouts. Southern Way is used daily by pedestrians at Staple Tyre, Bush Fair and Passmore School. Thousands of pedestrians use Southern Way and cross it every day, as well as the vast amounts of traffic that come down that road. Congestion in the morning is always 3+ hours. Congestion in the evening is also 3+ hours. Large lorries travelling to the warehouses and the vehicles use this road constantly, driving over the mini roundabouts because they can't go round them. Satellite navigation is used to allow drivers the quickest way, and that seems to be the quickest way from the M11 to the warehouses. Yes, there are schools on Southern Way and they are heavily polluted by this, and they're not off Southern Way, they're actually on Southern Way. Southern Way is a narrow road where overtaking does not happen. The road cannot take the volume of traffic. It will only get worse without junction 7A. And I don't know what will happen if we have no 7A and they shut junction 7 for repairs. 7A will definitely take some of the traffic down other routes such as Edinburgh Way. So for my part of the town, I must vote for the Gilman Way option.
Councillor Gallagher.
Part of the town,
Yes, thank you, Chair. I want to deal with this issue of aspiration because I think a lot of the technical arguments about Junction 7A not only have already been dealt with this evening, but have been dealt with quite conclusively in the various presentations we've had. There isn't a technical case for Junction 7A. Even the proponents of it only suggest that it will take 10% of the traffic from Junction 7, which, you know, is hardly going to make any difference to the problems on Southern Way or anywhere else in the town. But coming back to this question of aspiration, it's suggested that if we don't support 7A, we're against aspiration, as if Junction 7A is something really modern that we ought to all be grateful for the town. Now, I don't think this is the case. Certainly it's not necessary for the aspiration for the enterprise zone, as Tony's already said. In fact, when you look at the details of the documents for the enterprise zone, it says that Highways England are quite prepared to relax the conditions they put for Junction 7A if we have sustainable transport, and I believe that we will for such a development as the enterprise zone. So, if it was just a question of building Junction 7A and, you know, as has been suggested, aspiration, we're going to get, you know, the limousines coming in from Stansted with all these American entrepreneurs, fine. I mean, we wouldn't mind that. But in fact, what Junction 7A is going to deliver is not aspiration, it's going to deliver a lot of lorries coming into Harlow, along Gilden Way, not down Edinburgh Way. They won't be going down Edinburgh Way, they'll be going straight along First Avenue and through the town. We will end up with a major route through the heart of this town. We have fought in this, well, not me in the council chamber, but others in this council chamber have fought for the last 40 or 50 years to be against this town being divided by major highway routes. We had the argument about the 414, which the county council wanted to bring down 2nd Avenue, and we resisted it. And that's why it ends up going around this stupid route around Edinburgh Way. So, in fact, aspiration will deliver lorries for a large part of the northern half of the town. Also, I think it's been underestimated the amount of traffic that would be drawn to a new junction from the other side of the motorway. All these villages that are currently unaware of the implications for themselves, because they would suddenly be confronted by traffic from a vast area coming through Hatfield Keith, coming through Shearing to get access to Junction 7A. That would hardly be aspirational from their point of view. But the last point I'd like to make is on the question of safety, which has already been alluded to. The current proposals for Junction 7 are to address the question of safety. The reason why they need a safety scheme is because of the congestion on Junction 7. Traffic is queuing back onto the motorway, and that, in anybody's terms, is the most dangerous thing we can have. They need to get on with that scheme before we have a major accident with the lorries going into the back of queuing cars. We need to not only ensure that they keep the money they've got, we need to argue they should have more money to do a much bigger improvement scheme for Junction 7 to make it more safe than even they are planning at the moment. They certainly don't want to have the money taken away and end up waiting another 10 years for anything to happen to Junction 7, apart from a major accident. So I would say, having something that doesn't work and is going to cause problems for the town, for the people who live in the town, and for the safety on Junction 7 is not aspirational at all. Quite the opposite. We should look for other alternatives other than a new motorway junction to the north of the town.
much, Madam Chairman. What an absolute pleasure to be part of a debate that has been so well thought out by different sides of this chamber and so passionately and comprehensively argued. I think it's a credit to us as local government officials that we can have debates like this, and a credit to the town that both sides of the argument are being well put tonight. I want to make it clear, Madam Chairman, that on behalf of my group, what I have done as a leader this evening is given my group an entirely free vote on the matter. It is an incredibly important matter for the town. It causing incredibly passionate feelings to arise from across the town, and I think it only right that councillors not be shackled by party politics, that they be allowed to represent the views of their residents, and I've given all of my members tonight a free vote and the chance to speak their mind. That being said, I have to speak my own mind, Madam Chairman. I was told by someone earlier today that I'm not really that qualified to talk on a new junction of the M11 because I'm not a driver. And some may see that as true, but actually I sat and thought about that, and I thought about the amount of times as a passenger that I've sat in traffic across the town, that I've sat the number of journeys that I've taken, be it by bus, by cab, my wife driving me, my father driving me, members of the group driving me across town for various meetings, and the number of times I've been caught in traffic. Harlow is a living, growing organism, and at the moment its arteries are completely clogged. They are damaged, and they're not going to get any better. I totally understand why and respect why Councillor Charles and Councillor Garnett have moved this amendment tonight, and I think their residents in Old Harlow should be rightly proud of them, because they really do believe what they're saying tonight, that the Gilden Way option is bad for their residents in Old Harlow. But I really believe that a new junction on the M11 is what's best for Harlow as a whole, and that's what I've been elected as a councillor to think about Harlow as a whole. Councillor Charles's amendment is very noble in that it asks us to pause, and sometimes pausing for reflection is very good. But as Councillor Wilkinson pointed out, when I first got on this council in 1998, 18 years ago, we were talking about Junction 7A then. My worry is if we pause for reflection now, we could still be debating this Junction 7A in another 18 years' time. And I honestly do not believe that our town can cope with another 18 years without a relief valve. I've spoken about how important it is to represent your residents. As a member for Church Langley, we talk about the town only having one major exit into the infrastructure network. Church Langley only has one exit into the whole of the town. And I can tell you now the number of complaints and the number of very angry Church Langley residents there are when the M11 junction at the moment does back up and you literally cannot get out of Church Langley because you cannot get out of that one exit. I think we should do whatever we can to support Harlow growing, to support Harlow being open for business, and to support us becoming a major hub in the future economically. We're already one of the first choices for small businesses. We're pitching ourselves as the place for science and medtech. That can only be achieved if we have the transport infrastructure to match it. That's why my group brought the motion to the previous full council about bringing Crossrail 2 to the town. I want the best infrastructure links possible for Harlow. I want the best infrastructure links that my town could possibly have. That's why, with regret, I cannot support the amendment tonight, and it's why I've seconded the original motion, which I'll talk about when we return to the substantive. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
As the town's future. Both are unpalatable in some respect. It was always inevitable that M11 Junction and 7A would provoke opposition, irrespective of where it was proposed to be sited. However, from the earliest consideration of the matter that I've had, I've remained convinced that doing nothing is not an option. I also believe that by design or by default, we've reached a point where if we prevaricate further, we run the risk of losing the financial and political support for a new junction. I have huge support for those opposing the Gilden Way option. Like most members, I believe the northern bypass is the correct route that we should be considering. But we've reached a point where it's clear that that's not going to happen in my lifetime, and I hope that that is quite a few years to come. I absolutely respect the position of our old Harlow councillors. They've listened to their residents and they've supported their views, views that have been clearly expressed within their ward. And faced with a similar situation, I'd like to think that I'd act similarly. But Harlow needs road relief and it needs it now. There will be implications for our roads and neighbourhoods in terms of traffic approaching and leaving the new junction. And we have a duty to ensure, demand and insist that we get the measures that we need to minimise detrimental impact and to maximise safety. With a degree of reluctance and not without reservations, I will be supporting the M11 Junction 7A recommendations and opposing the amendment. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Coleman.
Ian.
Sorry.
Thank you, Chair. We all know that traffic is atrocious in this town and it's not going to get any better. And we know we need to get better infrastructure, and Essex County is dictating us where we need it. I don't feel that we have to listen to what Essex County is telling us, because by the end of the day, it's what the residents in this town need and know what's best for them. We do need a better road. I don't personally agree where they're putting it, because Old Harlow is a beautiful town and it's very attractive, it's peaceful, it's got a lot of greenery, good environment. Putting it on Gildon Way will separate Old Harlow to two different areas, but we do need something. Like Mark said, a northern bypass would be better, because while they're going to develop the north side, it'd be good to actually put a better road there. But to achieve this, we need to tell Essex County that we do not want what they're proposing. We want what is best for our town. Junction 7 is important. Like Councillor Purton said, the health and safety is very important. So we really need to make sure the council, the Essex County, spend that money and develop Junction 7. I know everywhere there's development, we will have disruption, but sometimes, unfortunately, we have to put up with it to make it better. And personally, in the past, when they developed Harlow, everywhere should have been dual carriageway, that Southern Way, all the avenues, but it never happened, and now we're suffering. But this is what we need to do, is tell Essex County, what we want. And I know we don't want the Gildon Way Junction 7A, but we need a better infrastructure for our traffic. So I will not support Councillor Charles' motion, but I'm also voting against the main substantive motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I have always been for the Northern Bypass, and when it's come to looking at Essex County officers, I've always battled with them. Whatever meetings we've been in, I've gone with that view that we needed a Northern Bypass, and Junction 7A was not going to be it. But living in Potter Street, directly behind the 414, at least 3 or 4 times a week, sadly, we are blocked. Buses can't get through. It takes 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes sometimes to get through the Southern Way roundabout. And people are getting fed up. So, the only conclusion I've been able to come to after a lot of thinking about this is we are not doing this for the future now, having Junction 7A, which I did not want. We are doing it for 30 years, 50 years down the line. I'd still like a northern bypass, but financially we can't do it. If we're going to have to wait up to potentially 30 years, I could be dead quicker. And it won't happen when a lot of our children, my grandchildren, are going out into the employment factor and want to get jobs, housing, etc., etc. So I've come to the conclusion that we have to have junction 7A because we can get it quicker. The cost is not going to be like the northern bypass cost. But I'm not happy that I'm having to say this, but this is the conclusion I've come to because we need to get the traffic moving around the town and it's not happening right now. Because, as I say, being in Potter Street, I'm exposed to this at least 3 or 4 times a week and we cannot do nothing. We cannot sit back and say, no, we don't want junction 7A, but what are we going to do? So I cannot support the amendment and I have to go with the substantive motion. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Klempner, do you wish to reply to the amendment? Oh. Too late, I'm afraid.
It's been the most exciting speech you've ever heard.
You've told us that before.
I'll keep this a bit brief. I just want to reiterate what Councillor Johnson said. I've given my group a complete free vote on the subject as well, and indeed the motion to follow as is offered with. And clearly you'll have heard a spectrum of views from my group on this subject, and they will vote accordingly. But much of the debate on the amendment, and I'll try and confine my remarks right now to the amendment, as trying to pitch this as a binary choice between a short-term fix and a long-term solution, between junction 7A or junction 7, between a northern bypass or junction 7 down Gildon Way. And it isn't about those binary choices. So I share the aspiration, probably everybody in this room, certainly all the councillors, about a northern bypass is the right long-term solution. This particular plan recognises that that is the long-term solution. It's specifically in the plans to allow connection to a northern bypass. But let's be clear. A couple of remarks we've made, councillors who were debating this in the last millennium, I certainly wasn't one of them. But the key for me about this amendment is item C. What it says is we're not going to improve junction 7 until we've got the decision and funding for a 7A with a northern bypass. Councillor Carter mentioned a figure of £300 million. The last number I heard was £650 million, and it might be considerably north of that. Let's be realistic. Yes, if we do this now, we will provide somebody for junction 7. We'll provide an alternative access to the motorway. We make provision for the longer term aspiration. But if we accept this motion, I'm not sure I'll be debating this in 18 years in this chamber, but we certainly won't have a new junction, northern bypass or otherwise. And that's the principal reason why I cannot support this amendment.
We move then to the vote. All those in favour of the amendment, please show your hand. And all those against the amendment. The amendment fails. We return to the original motion. Who would like to speak? Anybody wish to speak to the
Chairman, the stakes tonight could not be higher for Old Harlow and the surrounding wards. The quality of life for many people in Harlow now hangs in the balance because of this crucial vote on this motion. If we get this decision wrong, we risk the future prosperity of our town. Traffic congestion is holding back Harlow, and something dramatic has to be done to resolve it. I believe junction 7A via Gildon Way is not the solution. This debate is particularly emotional, not just for me, but for the residents who I serve in Old Harlow. I've lived in Old Harlow for nearly 30 years, like Councillor Garnett. we are all very proud of our community, and we fight to maintain the character of our corner of Harlow. The current Junction 7A plan threatens to divide Old Harlow. Churchgate Street would become increasingly isolated, in my view, by this proposal, and that, to me, is not acceptable. We cannot ignore the fact of the impact Junction 7A by Gildon Way will have on neighbouring wards close to Old Harlow. Traffic congestion will build up as more vehicles attempt to access the new junction. There is also a major impact on one of Harlow's much-loved businesses. Mayfield Farm is a thriving local business that is based on Shearing Road. They have said that just a 12% drop in their customers could result in job losses at the farm. 23 full-time members of staff work at that business. When I was elected to serve the residents of Old Harlow, I promised to fight plans to build Junction 7A on Gildon Way. It was clear to me from the very early stages that this proposal was a short-term fix, and I'm never going to change my mind on that. This motion does not go far enough to address the concerns of local people. The majority of residents who responded to the second consultation opposed the Gildon Way scheme. Now, I know that there are councillors here tonight who are genuinely conflicted about which way to vote. I urge you to think about the long-term implications of this decision. The truth is that Junction 7A is not the silver bullet that resolve all of our traffic congestion problems. Let's send a message to Essex and Hertfordshire that now is the time to think again and invest in a better infrastructure plan for Harlow's future. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Now this is a shorter version now. Junction 7 we know is not safe. That's why we got the money to improve that. Proposed 7A junction is in the wrong place. The traffic will come through Gildon Way where there are houses being built. It will impact through First Avenue up to the town and down to the station. At a meeting with Essex County Council representatives last week, they poo-pooed the idea of having a weight restriction in First Avenue, an area that I represent. We need 7A, but not where it's planned. We need works to Junction 7. Essex County Council has not listened. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. As we've heard tonight, one of the drawbacks of public office is having to make decisions which are unpopular to some. As John Lydgate said many years, centuries ago, you can please some of the people all the time and all of the people some of the time. You can't please all of the people all of the time. The proposed route will have a major impact on Gildon Way, there is no doubt about it. Essex County Council have consulted on a number of occasions and altered their proposals accordingly. It's therefore important and vital that we support the residents of Old Harlow in ensuring that all their issues are addressed. Now there is still more work to come on the Gildon Way proposal concerning sound and pollution attenuation, and we all have to make sure that is dealt with properly. But as also been said tonight, doing nothing is not an option. Whilst we have our love affair with the motor car, we will continue to need more and more roads. There is general agreement, as we've heard, that the additional junction is required, just not where it will go. A northern bypass extending the 414 to the north of Harlow is often cited as a preferred option. But two questions emerge, to which I've not had answers yet. Who would use it, apart from some HGVs? Around 85% of the traffic using Junction 7 at the moment originates within Harlow. As Councillor Downs has referred to, people going to and from work, and we do have an extensive number of warehouses. And secondly, the road would be built entirely in Hertfordshire. So have the people there been consulted on having a major highway pushing through two sites of special scientific interest, a site of antiquarian interest, and building a viaduct across a water meadow within the green belt? I'm sure there are one or two wealthy residents in Hertfordshire who could mount quite substantial legal campaign against that. And would a north bypass relieve pressure on Junction 7? If you live in Old Road and want to travel to London on the M11, it's about 3.5 miles to Junction 7. If you want to access the M11 to the same point via Northern Bypass, it's about 3 times as far. So what would be the attraction in drawing people away from Junction 7? And is it environmentally desirable to have people going 3 times longer than they actually need to? And as we've already heard, it would be incredibly expensive. I'm surprised that some people have mentioned sort of just relying on Junction 7. That would lead, as we also heard, to years of further congestion, which we've already had on the 414. And it still focuses all the traffic into one corner of the town. And it'll do nothing to actually relieve the congestion in actually trying to get there and get away from it. Now, everyone has their own experience of Harlow's roads, but you can only be in one place at any one time. Essex Highways has spent a lot of time and resources on censuses, traffic surveys and traffic modelling, covering all the roads, all the junctions, by the hour, by the day and by the month. And their research is there to see. There's the 80, on the consultation document, there's the 80-page technical appraisal report, the 150-page model forecasting report, and the 156-page options appraisal report. You know, this is not just a whim that somebody's all jumped up on the back of a fact packet. This is serious research, and a lot of time and effort has gone into it. And it does, the various reports there do actually refer to a total of 5 other options, which Essex have looked at over the last few years in trying to reach a conclusion. So it's not true to say that there aren't any options that have been looked at. So in trying to do our best for the whole community, we have to follow where the evidence leads us. And that has to be to a second junction on the motorway. No solution is going to be perfect. The roundabouts on Edinburgh Way have already been mentioned. Extra traffic on First Avenue have been mentioned. But you can't do everything at once. There is enough
30 seconds
already. The proposal tonight meets the pressing need and can improve or reduce congestion, particularly the exit to Church Langley. It can be done in the shortest time, but yes, there is more to be done. Almost there. As I say, no option is going to be perfect, but there is one that helps most of the people most of the time, which this one does. Doing nothing or pushing a decision further back is not going to reduce congestion, nor help bring more homes, more jobs and more growth to Harlow.
Thank you. Councillor Garnett.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Members, if at first you don't succeed, try again. I'm quite emotive about this anyway. I cannot possibly support this motion tonight, knowing that the proposed route along Gildon Way will divide Old Harlow and Churchgate Street. The decision you make tonight is incredibly serious, as it will have far-reaching and long-term consequences for the Old Harlow and Churchgate Street community and its residents. It will also have a detrimental effect on Marcourt. In a nutshell, it would destroy this whole area, bringing traffic chaos, pollution and destroying acres of greenbelt land. Madam Chairman, members, in the current proposals they only talk about 19% increase in pollution, but Hertfordshire County Council's figure is much higher. I'm sorry I can't give you that figure, it's been told me. Why they're underestimating this figure, I will leave that answer to you. It goes without saying that the effect on the environment will be huge and unavoidable should this scheme get back into this council. There will be thousands of cars and lorries pumping out diesel and petrol fumes 24 hours a day. Madam Chairman, members, there will be 70% increase in the volume of traffic using this B183 road. Yes, it will be widened in parts, and there is enough, where there is enough room, but in some areas the scheme will pass within metres of houses. This particularly applies to the residents of some of the houses in the Oxfords, where the road would pass within about 10 metres of their front door, and it would blight their lives forever. It would also be higher than their front door, because the road is already high because of the underpass there. The proposed three-lane road would be disproportionate in scale and visually obtrusive in this residential village setting. This can be seen by the so-called pinch point at its junction with Mulberry Green, where there is hardly an inch of space left between buildings on each side of the road, and vehicles will pass unacceptably close to existing houses. In short, the road does not fit the space. It has been shoehorned in. I cannot visualise a house builder being allowed to build a house so close to a road. So why should a road builder be allowed to build so close to houses? This proposed route would also potentially destroy businesses in Mayfield Farm. You've heard about that place, where there is a thriving, award-winning bakery cafe, employing some 23 persons. There is also a sausage shop, a flower shop, and a dog grooming parlour. All of these will be at risk, employing some 50 local persons. The reason being is that to gain access to these businesses, you will have to journey much longer. At the junction with Churchgate Street, they are proposing a hamburger junction. This would undoubtedly cause delays to traffic coming out of Churchgate Street, as this junction will be controlled by traffic lights. It is already very difficult for residents to get out of Churchgate Street, both in the morning and in the evenings. Now think what will happen with a 70% increase in traffic. Rat running around Mulberry Green and Old Road would also be a major problem. Already accepted by the planning inspector during the Gilden Way North planning inquiry. This route will be taken by cars and lorries to escape from the traffic congestion in getting to Edinburgh Way and or Bishop Stortford via the A1184. Yes, there is a suggestion that no right turn into Mulberry Green could be part of the scheme, but who takes any notice of that? When you are desperate to get away from a traffic jam, we currently have a no right turn at the end of Old Road, with its junction with the A1184 Harlow Mill, but most drivers take no notice, especially cabbies wanting to go north to Saltworth. We must stand together and tell Councillor Rodney Bass that this scheme is totally unacceptable, and to go away and put together another more acceptable scheme away from Gilden Way, and that preferably being the northern bypass. That is what I call future-proofing, not a short-term fix that should have no future in this town. Sorry about that. Another suggestion would be to dual the rest of the A414, going south from Gates Roundabout to the Hamburger Junction in Southern Way. Finally, we have for years been trying to reverse the tide of shoppers abandoning the local shops, or hatches as they're so called. Old Harlow's been hanging in there, but this scheme will probably ring the death now, as access to Old Harlow Shopping Centre will be virtually cut off to residents of Churchgate Street and New Hall. Shoppers will be met by longer journeys, traffic congestion, and a plethora of no right turns and blocked off roads.
30 seconds.
Madam Chairman, I'm nearly there. Members, is this really what you want? I can tell you now, this is what you will get if you vote through this motion tonight. I implore you, do not do this. Our residents will not thank you, nor will the businesses that go bust as a result of this irresponsible and divisive scheme. I could talk for another hour or so why this scheme would be an unmitigated disaster for the residents of Old Harlow and Churchgate Street. But I hope I've given you all an insight as to what will become of this area should you agree with the motion before Council tonight. Let us reject this motion and ask Councillor Bass and Essex Highways. I've got 2 lines, Madam Chairman. Essex Highways to go back to their envelope and come up with a scheme that does and will solve Harlow's traffic problems, long term, not in a month of Sundays.
Sorry. Yes, it is. Yes, you did indicate to speak, didn't you?
Yes, I did, thank you. I wasn't going to speak until Simon spoke. So. Number of things I'd like to clear up. First of all, as far as public consultation is concerned, at every stage, Essex County Council has been told no, very, very forcefully, at every single stage. And even before the last public consultation was finished, Bass was going off, possibly with our MP, we're a bit unclear about the details, to Whitehall to actually rearrange financing. Now, if that's not ignoring public opinion, I don't know what is. And at the end of the day, people say, well, it doesn't matter because not many people... I've been encouraged, reluctantly, to actually go on social media. In the last few years, I've been looking at social media. And you actually troll through from the advert for the Harlow Star here, and of course your august publication. You troll through the comments, Chairperson, and you actually find people absolutely against this scheme, one after the other, after the other, after the other. But you get very few people actually defending it. The second thing with Simon, and I was quite confused at one stage, because apparently nobody's actually going to use the junction if it goes ahead anyway, because it's too far away from anybody. All I would say, Chair, is that if somebody is coming up to 2/3 of the way through their life, because I'm 67 next month, I hope to actually see this bypass in my lifetime. If we throw in the town now and actually just go for what is a very unwanted bypass, then we will not get a proper bypass, a bypass north of Harlow. Let's not go down this Tory road today. Let's actually make sure that we make a stand for Harlow, give Essex a clear message, vote down this resolution, and make sure that Bass, who lives in Morden, may I say, who's actually been the biggest proponent of this scheme, actually is able to actually get the message loud and clear that we don't want it.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. Wow, what an emotional night I think it's been so far. I think it's right that we discuss with passion, and it's right that we discuss in depth as we have done.
But we don't listen.
I was put in a very difficult position when John approached me earlier this month to talk about the junction. The Leader of the Council has always known that I've been in favour of a new junction on the M11, as I think a number of councillors around this chamber have. But he asked me to second it, and he asked me to second it for a couple of reasons. It's important that this town send a message. It's important that this town send a message to both the County Council, as much as Councillor Danvers doesn't like the County Council, and I respect that. Send a message to the County Council, and send a message to indeed the government, the minister involved, that Harlow wants this junction. And I honestly do believe that the majority of Harlow does want this junction. I understand the concerns of Old Harlow. They have been rightly expressed tonight. And I understand if it was coming through the back of Church Langley, the majority of Church Langley residents would be against it. And I would probably be standing here tonight saying, as a Church Langley councillor, I'm against it. But it's not. It's coming through Old Harlow. I think a number of truths have come out over this debate. The fact is, we need works to Junction 7. It's desperately needed. But can you imagine, Madam Chairman, the absolute chaos of starting the works on Junction 7 without some other form of relief road in effect? The town would be gridlocked for years. It's without doubt that the majority of members in this chamber favour a northern bypass. It's the long-term recognition of Essex County Council, and it was one of the insistences I made to the Leader of the Council on seconding this motion that we include that in item C, that the long-term aim of this council remains a northern bypass. But the facts are the hundreds of millions of pounds, not just the millions of pounds, the hundreds of millions of pounds are not there for a northern bypass at the moment. The only money that is there needs to be used. I've already said in the previous debate, part of the debate, that I don't believe pausing or trying to seek a separate solution will achieve anything other than not gaining the junction that we're being offered at the moment. Essex County Council, East Herts, Uttlesford, Epping Forest. All those councils have signed up to this junction and said, yes, they're in favour. Harlow is the only council that has not yet signed up. It is important that we send a message to government. It's important that we send a message to government that Harlow is open for business, that Harlow wants its economy to thrive, and I respect the comments made by Councillor Garnett about the 50-odd jobs that could be at risk at Mayfield Farm, but I'm thinking about the hundreds of jobs that could be at risk by firms not moving into the town or moving out of the town because they do not have the transport infrastructure necessary to support their employment. And there are shakes of head around the room, but I think that is a serious, serious possibility. I think you'll always have people arguing against growth. You'll always have people arguing against what they don't know. And you'll always have people arguing against the future of development. Not so far from here, 50 years ago, there was a public inquiry, 1965 to 1966. And Mr. Douglas Frank, QC, representing Essex County Council, Chigwell Council, Harlow Council, Epping Council and Albury Council, stood before a planning inquiry and said, this is bad planning, bad for local agriculture and catastrophic for the character of such a lovely rural area. He was talking about Stansted becoming the third London airport. And at the time, that was the view held by a lot of people in Harlow, and Bishop Stortford and all up the corridor, that an airport at Stansted was totally wrong. Flip forward 50 years, and I doubt there's many of us in this room and many of the residents of the town that haven't used that airport and haven't thought how wonderful it is not to have to go to Heathrow or Gatwick. Madam Chairman, people will object to change and people will always object to development. But we as a council must do what is right for future generations of this town, and we must relieve the current traffic problems. We must support this junction.
Thank you, Chair. I wasn't going to speak, but was listening to Councillor Johnson talking about funding, and unfortunately what the Essex County is saying is we can't have a northern bypass now because there's no money. When we can have money, if only the government start connecting the companies who have been avoiding the taxes, we could get loads of money and we can actually have a northern bypass maybe in the next 5-10 years. So there is money, and unfortunately the government's not releasing it. Thank you.
Well, I'll just ask, any further people wishing to speak?
I addressed, but on this occasion I must say that it is good to see this chamber in debate, proper debate for the town. And I must say that Councillor Danvers, I don't often agree with what you say, but I'm totally in agreement with what you say. And there's a worry. I would just say something I said earlier, that what is being suggested here for the people of Harlow, I'm at Staple Tyre, I'm at the opposite end of the town. I've actually talked to some of my residents who said this isn't the fix for Harlow. So they're concerned about what we're going to make the decision on tonight. It's not just Harlow, it's not just Old Harlow, Church Langley. The people in Staple Tyre, some of the residents that I've spoken to have said this is not the fix for Harlow. And if we're going to make a proper informed decision, then let us get the proper information from Essex County Council. Let them give us the noise levels, let them give us the pollution levels. Then this council can make a proper informed decision on this junction. I will be opposing the Gilden Way approach.
Any other member wishing to speak? In which case, Councillor Clampner, would you like to sum up?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. I genuinely understand that there is strong feeling in Old Harlow, and certainly out of the 140 odd people who responded to the last consultation, a majority, not a vast majority, but a majority objected to the proposals. But I'm putting this motion because I genuinely believe this is in the best interest of the whole lot. It recognises, in the words of the motion, that it's not just about 7A. We need improvements to Junction 7, and there is a long-term aspiration for a northern bypass. I accept it's not a silver bullet, but it is an essential part of the mix. And the most important thing about this motion is It recognises the reality of where we are. This is the only way we're likely to get an additional junction in the short to medium term that will provide essential resilience and alternative access to the city's motorway network. It recognises that by doing junction 7A first, as Councillor Johnson has said, we're not doing major roadworks on the only access to the strategic road network. And actually doing this with incorporation of the plans for the spur road actually increases the likelihood we will get a northern bypass in the future. When there is, we have significant development to the north of Harlow on Gilson Park that will provide both a critical mass and an element of funding. By having the actual junction and the plans to connect that to a northern bypass, that will increase the likelihood. So while I recognise the very local strength of feeling, I would urge councillors to consider the broader interest of Harlow in terms of its strategic infrastructure, its economic growth, and supporting the housing that Harlow desperately needs. I would urge you to vote for this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Councillor Shaw.
Chair, I stand with a number of councillors to call for a named vote on this motion.
There will be a named vote.
Thank you, Chair. Will councillors say for, against, or abstain for the motion when I read their name? Councillor Beckett? For. Councillor David Carter? For. Councillor Simon Carter? For. Councillor Charles? Against. Councillor Churchill? For. Councillor Clark?
For. Sorry, again.
Councillor John Klempner? For. Councillor Karen Klempner?
For.
Councillor Danvers?
Against.
Councillor Davis?
Against.
Councillor Durkin?
For.
Councillor Foreman?
Against.
Councillor Garnett?
Against.
Councillor Hall?
For.
Councillor Holcoop?
For.
Councillor Ingle?
For.
Councillor Andrew Johnson?
For.
Councillor Eddie Johnson?
For.
Councillor Shona Johnson?
For.
Councillor Livings?
Against.
Councillor Long?
Against.
Councillor Mullard?
For.
Councillor Pryor?
Against.
Councillor Purton?
Against.
Councillor Shears?
Against.
Councillor Souter?
Against.
Councillor Strachan?
For.
Councillor Stevens?
For.
Councillor Toll?
For.
Councillor Truan?
For.
Councillor Waite?
For.
Councillor Wilkinson?
Against.
1814.
The motion is passed 19 to 13.
1814.
No, I can't 19.
It now being 9 o'clock, and this having been quite a very hot evening, I'm calling for a comfort break for 10 minutes because I think the second item will be equally long. Make a start. Councillor Perkins, I understand you are moving the motion.
Thank you, Chair.
Yes. Shall I just get a second before you start? Who is seconding the motion? Thank you. Yes, would you like to speak to it now?
Okay.
Yeah.
Are we ready to go? Right. Thank you, Chair. Obviously, there's been a lot of the discussion about the future of the town has already been laid out before the meeting in the previous motion, so I won't go over that. My particular responsibility this evening is to bring to the council the necessary details that need to be agreed as council policy in order for us to take forward and complete with the other authorities in which we're linked to in the housing market area, in order that we can, with them, move towards completion of the local development plan. And it's our intention with East Hertfordshire, Epping Forest and Utterswood districts to present our local plans simultaneously, and hopefully that they can go together, forward together as a package. Not necessarily seamless, but nevertheless a package. The motion that I wish to move is divided into specific clauses in order that all the different points that I wish to bring to the Council for decision are quite clearly set out. Some of them are obvious, and others perhaps I need to explain a little bit of the background. The first point is the projection for requirements of dwellings in the housing market area, which is the four councils, well, the three other councils and ourselves are working together as a group. And the government has, statisticians, managed to say that this time, have brought forward revised figures which in the various calculations that have to be done have led to a revised projection of just over 51,000 dwellings for the whole of the Schmar area. So it's useful for us to note or to accept that figure, because obviously it's different to the figure that we've been using for some time. The implications of not supporting that figure obviously are quite serious, because that's the figure the government are telling us we've got to produce in the planned period. That's the figure that arises from the projections that the government has supplied. The second point supports the spatial option of strategic housing sites to the north and northeast of Harlow. These sites obviously have a large potential for the future, but within the plan period that we're addressing here, which is up to 2033, the consultants have advised us, and they put this forward in their presentation last week to councillors, all councillors, that they've set out figures that they consider these sites could deliver during the plan period. And of course it has to be borne in mind that the figure for the number of dwellings that has to be delivered is not a figure over that can be delivered during a long period. That figure is divided into an annual count, which we have to deliver every year, and that has to be borne in mind. The third point raises something that is a change to council policy, in that because of the revised figures, because of the upward movement in the numbers of dwellings required, it's necessary to examine other sites other than ones to the north and the northeast. But because these sites have been rejected, some of them have been rejected in the past, it's necessary for us to make them a separate clause to the ones we've always supported. And that's why it's in a separate clause, and that's why that some of the special points are made about our possible acceptance of these sites in the future. Councillor Mullard will be proposing an amendment which actually makes our concerns about these sites even clearer, and we're quite happy to accept Councillor Mullard's amendment. Point 4 refers to the growth sites within Harlow.
Your time is up, Councillor Burton. Would you bring this up to a conclusion?
Chairman, can I move
move that we suspend standing orders and allow the cabinet member on this very important debate to continue so that we're all fully briefed before the debate.
I'm not making a speech.
Yes, we'll allow us.
Right, thank you, Chair. Yes, number 4 recognises that for the sites within the district boundary, we need to ensure that they are provided with the necessary transport and highways infrastructure to deal with increased traffic they generate. Number 5 is self-evident, which we've already had extensive discussions on. Number 6 refers to something that I'm particularly interested and involved in, which is the provision of sustainable transportation schemes involving high quality public transport routes. I think we need to have aspirations, to use a well-known phrase. We need to have aspirations about public transport in Harlow, as we used to a number of years ago before the County Council decided that public transport wasn't really that important anymore. We used to have a Harlow area transportation strategy, which some of the schemes that we enjoy at the moment on 2nd Avenue and 1st Avenue were part of the delivery of that transportation strategy. But that strategy sort of wound down. We need to revive a transportation strategy. Integrated transportation is what we need, because we cannot keep, aside from the discussions about external links to the town, which we've just had, we also need to consider how traffic is going to move around the town, because we can't keep attracting more and more traffic and expecting the network to just take more and more traffic, more and more cars, more and more lorries. We need to start looking at alternatives, sustainable alternatives to just increasing traffic capacity. Number 8 refers to the need to ensure that any developments that occur around and inside the town are built in conjunction with the philosophy of the new town itself. And this has been recognised by the government, who have their own Garden Town projects, and Garden Town concepts are a specific term. There's not just a sort of casual term about thousands of things. The Garden Town is almost a semi-legalistic description of a particular type of development, and it includes the original Gibbard philosophy. And number 6, simply as a catch-all phrase, we will seek to ensure that all developments will contribute towards the necessary provision of, if you like, everything that we can get out of them, to put it in a pragmatic nutshell. So I feel that these clauses set out the approach we will take in both concluding the local development plan and bringing it to a successful conclusion and public inquiry, but also to determine our approach to negotiations with developers in the future, where it sets out the various ways in which we will seek to ensure that what they provide is not only suitable in terms of how we would regard the Garden Town concept, but also makes provision for our existing residents as well as new residents, and provides affordable homes that our residents actually need at the present time. So I would ask you to support the clauses in order that the Council can move forward. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Klempner, do you wish to speak now or reserve your right to? Thank you, Councillor Harlow.
I'd like to place an amendment to section 3 to delete it first and change it to the words, bear with me. Harlow Council has reservations regarding spatial options on strategic sites to the west and to the south of Harlow. Harlow Council will only consider such options once transportation and infrastructure issues are addressed and no other favourable options are forthcoming.
Thank you. Does anybody second that?
Seconded.
Yes, thank you. You now wish to speak, please? Yes,
Sorry, Chair, I've already indicated that we accept the
you
amendment.
accept it.
So
and
it
the
becomes a
person-
substantive motion.
Right, thank you. In that case, we continue. Yes, Councillor. Oh, I think you seem to want to. Councillor Muller, did you wish to continue speaking?
Yes, please.
Carry on.
Yeah, thank you. I understand the need for cooperation with other authorities that we're neighboured with. That said, this council is allowed to have its voice heard on where we want our houses built in this area and neighbouring areas. Now, I believe there's a further motion coming later which will ask for the deletion of clause 3 completely from the motion. Now, I believe if we accept that motion later, we put this whole plan at risk, and we then will be in the position of having a plan forced upon us, which will not be for the benefit of any Harlow resident whatsoever. So I would ask you to consider the motion as full with my amendment and not delete this clause later, because I think it jeopardises people of Harlow and where we want to build the houses in the future. Thank you.
Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I rise to move a series of amendments which have been tabled and circulated to members. Whilst it was a pleasure of mine to push for suspension of standing orders to allow the Cabinet member to speak at length, which was very helpful to us, I think in the interest of expediency, I'd like to suggest, Madam Chairman, that I move them en bloc, but perhaps we vote on these each individually. I'll take you through the amendments that we wish to move. Firstly, to insert the words, on the basis that the proportion of these dwellings to be provided in Harlow will be the minimum to meet its growth needs at the end of point 1 between SHMA and semicolon. My group accepts that the government is asking for more houses, and indeed the area can probably sustain more houses in the macro area. And I note that the original strategic housing market assessment was for 46,100 homes. There has been a move to increase that by 4,910 homes across East Hertfordshire, Epping Forest, Harlow and Uttlesford to reach the new 51,010 number. However, in the original strategic housing market assessment, Harlow's number was 5,900 homes. We're now being asked to accept nearly 9,200 under the new numbers. That would mean to me that all the 4,000, 5,000 extra homes that are being put into the area are being put within the local authority boundaries of Harlow. I find that unacceptable. Everyone must take their fair share of housing. At a briefing session for members, I asked the consultants, the experts, what was Harlow's need. I was told between 6,000 and 7,000 houses. Now, I do not have any problem providing the number of houses within our district for the need of our district. What I won't do is provide housing within our already stressed district for the needs of other districts around us, which have a lot more room than us, and that is why I'm moving that first amendment. The second amendment, remove the words "and North East," remove the S from the areas, and remove the words "and Epping Forest." I don't want to see, I think at the moment it's 2,600 homes within Harlow's boundary and a further 750 homes in Epping Forest land, basically over the back of Churchgate Street. 3,500 homes built on Churchgate Street. We've all argued tonight that we want to protect the residents of Old Harlow. They're already having to put up with a junction that we've all admitted isn't probably the best option, but is the only option on the table. I don't want to further compound that problem by putting 3,500 extra homes on the back of Churchgate Street and causing further problems. So I want to remove that. As Councillor Mullard has already pointed out, my point 3 is to remove point 3 entirely. This council, when I was in control, had a policy that we were against, stated policy that we were against development to the south and west of the town. We're against development to the south of the town Latin Priory development, let's put the name out there, because we didn't want to intrude onto the top of the bowl in which Harlow was built, and we didn't want to start the process of urban sprawl into Epping Forest. We were against the extension to Sumners, and now suddenly a new extension to Catherine's that's on the table tonight, because again, we don't want to create that sprawl out into the neighbouring districts. One of my biggest worries, Madam Chairman, is although it may be only 1,000 houses in each of those areas, that's the initial. With the amount of land that Epping Forest owns around the Harlow borders, that 1,000 could soon become 10,000. And as we've already discussed tonight, Southern Way and the infrastructure in the southern and western part of our town will not cope with additional development. Inserting paragraph 4 is merely to insert the words all of between with and the, and to delete the words transport and highways. I understand what the Cabinet member was trying to do, and it is important to get the transport and highways infrastructure in, but I think if there's going to be growth in this town, we need to get all of the development infrastructure. And that's health, that's education, that's sewerage, that makes sure that we get everything, and I just want that to be comprehensive. And I thank the Cabinet member for his elucidation around Garden Town. So I'd like to remove the first part up until the semicolon of my 5 and just move to add the Harlow Design Guide after of Harlow and. I think we spent a lot of time in this council putting together the Harlow Design Guide about what we wanted in Harlow, what we wanted around the developments of Harlow, and I think it's important that we recognise that. Those are my amendments, Madam Chairman.
Yes. And I propose that we extend this meeting. I have to ask if members are willing to do that. It is a very important issue, and I know we've been here a long time, but all those in favour of extending the meeting, thank you very much for this, obviously clearly carried. Yes, I know you're seconding. I was ready for Councillor Johnson just finish what he was saying. Although you have almost used your 5 minutes.
Only just moved the motion, Madam Chairman. I haven't spoken to it.
Well, you've still used your 5 minutes.
I think I have nothing more to say.
I'm seconding but reserving my right to speak.
Thank you. Right, in that case, Councillor Klempner.
Thank you, Chair. I'm only going to speak specifically to the proposed amendments. So the first amendment, which is adding the clause about the minimum to meet its growth needs, I think we need to be clear what the objectively assessed need is and what it means. So the numbers that were quoted are between 6,000 and 7,000 is those that are required to meet simple demographic changes, changes in population, inward and outward migration. When the local plan panel, which had cross-party participation, agreed that growth aspiration numbers that went out to consultation about a year and a half or so ago, it was absolutely clear that in addition to the objectively assessed need, which is the minimum number to meet demographic need, we were going to go for more than that, specifically to meet affordability. So social housing, so the point is there was a separate number which articulated the need for affordable housing, genuinely affordable housing. And in order to deliver that number, we had to build a lot more because you only get a proportion. So the aspirations were around 12,000 when you took into account the affordability and the economic growth that things like the enterprise zone and public health England were doing. So let's be clear about what the minimum number means. It's not the number that the consultants quoted, and so I can't support that particular amendment because the aspiration actually is to meet affordability as well. The second point, in terms of removing the north-east, in part this comes down to the sort of the Garden Town thing, which I'll address a little bit more specifically in a moment. But it is about how we deliver a quantum of growth that is sustainable, that's in the right part of Harlow, that meets the needs of the broader needs of the strategic housing market area, that doesn't just attempt to lump all of that into East Herts, the Gilston Park, which clearly I'm in favour of significant growth in, that, as Councillor Johnson said, spreads the level a little and looks at the broader sort of Garden Town extension to Harlow. So that's why I would not support that amendment. Look, on item 3, which is about removing the reference to the south and west, I've been absolutely clear and consistent that I have a variety of objections to development to the south and west, and to the south, in addition to the ones that Councillor Johnson articulated. The additional pressure specifically put on junction 7 is obviously not concerned. But the amendment that Councillor Mullard has produced basically establishes that as an option of last resort. And from that basis, I will be not supporting that amendment. On item 4, I mean, my objection to this is simply a technical one. So what this seeks to do is to change the transport and highways element of this to all infrastructure. Well, this specific clause, which depending on which version you're looking at is either sort of, 4 or 5, is addressing the increased traffic it generates. Elsewhere, in the original item 7, it talks about the broader provision of transportation, infrastructure and associated community facilities. So that basically addresses the specific point in item 4. And then in item 5, I'm with the amendment to the printed version about removing the garden town. This is not an option between a garden town or the principles, it's both, and as you conceded that, absolutely. So the addition of the Harlow design guide, well, I think it's a little tautological in the sense that that will be a normal part of the planning process. On a personal basis, I'm happy to concede that because it actually doesn't make any difference. That's all I'll say.
Councillor Toll, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm in a rare position tonight where I disagree with most of my colleagues on this side and disagree with my leader. For me, in terms of the amendments, Amendment 3, which is remove point 3 in its entirety, which would seek to remove any possibility of development in the south and west, I will be supporting. I believe when you look at our town, and in particular Southern Way, that development to the south and west does not serve it well. We talk about Gibbert's plan, and I'm more than aware that actually originally that was part of his plan, but also the access points to the motorway and the A414 are completely different places. Our town has changed. They couldn't be further, even 7A, where we've now agreed, is not close to where they are. I believe at this point I represent Harlow Common, and in particular the biggest concern for me is Harlow South, Latin Priory. Latin Priory will negatively affect a large chunk of Harlow. It will reach onto the back of Harlow Common, Stapletie and parts of Bush Fair, which is south of Southern Way. We have an area where you look at the plans. I would have little objection if it was in Harlow, if actually in the district we had planning permission and we were able to choose the routes in and out. My issue is that the routes from Latin Priory to the motorway, with all their access, will come straight down through the back of the southern parts of Harlow and onto the Southern Way. An area that's already congested, that has already had work done to it to try and improve, and which has no further works planned, even though development would be happening. For me, part of Harlow Common, in Latin Common, where I'm a councillor, the buses have stopped running. The bus companies have simply said they will not run buses during the day because they cannot get through the road. I have older people and people with accessibility issues unable to get out to the doctors into the town because they can't make it down Southern Way to get the bus. How adding traffic that will go straight directly through this route will improve that issue at all, or make any access into Harlow at all easier, I do not believe. Taking away the section 3 of the current motion reverts the council to its existing position, which has always been no building to the south and west within our plans. I believe that adding even this leeway in Councillor Mullard's motion, I believe that that priority will become a reality. I think it's clear that from our surrounding authorities and the people that are making decisions on this, that it is the preferred option in the next terms, and that if we're to make these numbers, it will happen. I don't believe that's right. I don't believe it's right for my residents. I don't believe it's right for Harlow. I don't believe it's right for our areas. We are in a position we're often held to ransom by our surrounding areas. It is natural, because we're the urban conurbation, that the development does end up around Harlow, that many of our neighbouring authorities don't want it, or maybe some of their bigger conurbations doorsteps, and put with us. And we might be in a position where we have to concede some, but we're also in a position where we're strong enough to say this isn't right, that we should not change our existing position, that it is not right for our town, it's not right for our many for our many residents. So I thank my group, my leader, for having a free vote on this issue. I will be voting for the removal of section 3 of motion, and if that does not pass, I will not be supporting the plans tonight.
We passed a policy saying development to the south and west was objected to. And in 2013, Councillor Linda Paley, as she was then, and I actually asked members to reconfirm that. And as I seem to remember, every member over on the other side voted against that. So I think it's come back to bite you on the backside right now. The development to the south and west of the town, we're talking Summers West, we're talking Catherine's West, which is a complete lot for the blue last week, and also Latham Priory. The roads can't take it. Southern Way is gridlocked now, as we've all talked about. The Epping Road, which is no more than a cart track, would have to deal with all the traffic coming out of West Summers and West Catherine's for that matter. The London Road, of course, would suffer with Latham Priory, and of course the whole of the Southern Way corridor, which includes Commonside Road and Parringdon Road, would just grind to an absolute halt. Now, we heard at the meeting, at the private briefing that we had, the officer from county actually said, oh well, there wasn't going to be much of a problem on Southern Way, whereas the developers for Latham Priory, when I was talking to them a couple of years ago, said, oh look, yes, we've got all these plans we're going to make for the Southern Way to help the traffic move, because we know it's going to cause a problem. So who is telling us the facts? So yes, we need to develop, we need to expand in this town. I support expansion to the north of Harlow, the Gilston area, that part of the town. That's where it should all go. That would also, going back to the last item, would actually give more strength to a northern bypass with that there. But I cannot accept paragraph 3, even with Councillor Mullard's amendment, made in good grace, but you haven't been around with dealing with the South and West development as I have and some of my other colleagues have for the last 5-6 years. There's a very strong feeling. I cannot with good conscience support paragraph 3 or its amendment, and I would appeal to all of you to vote against paragraph 3 remaining. Let's take paragraph 3 out. Let's uphold the council policy that's been in place since 2005. You have an opportunity tonight to do that, which you failed to do in 2013. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. I'm sitting here because I found the air conditioning working over here. Let's remind ourselves of why we're doing this, Chair. The Conservative government, the last Conservative coalition government, put forward a Localism Act, tore up strategic planning, and has made us actually work with Epping Forest Council, Conservative, East Herts, Conservative, and Uttlesford, Conservative. And where do these Conservative people want to actually have the development? Well, surprise, surprise, they're going to put it all around Harlow. Now, what happens, remember the person who actually pushed this through, Pickles, was the guy who listened to us so much over Gilden Way. The whole community was against Gilden Way, and Pickles still signed and said, yes, that Gilden Way be developed. Our own Conservative MP, Robert Halford, actually voted for the Localism Act, and this actually got us in this situation. So our Conservative colleagues over there need to actually answer and account for why we're in such a predicament as we're in. If it was light, you would actually see the Ridgeway, that's very important to actually the design of this town. But we cannot accept, personally, I cannot accept any of the Conservative amendments. Why? because what the Localism Act is all about. If we do not go down the path that's being suggested, and this isn't just being suggested by us in isolation, it has taken Councillor Purden and Councillor Campbell a long time to negotiate the best interests of with Epping, East Herts and Uppersford, who just wanted to actually crowd everything on here. And it's being painted that in fact all the sites that we saw the other week are actually going to come to something. They're not. Only some of them will. Those sites will come to something though if we don't vote this through. The South will we will lose the Ridgeway sites and so on. We'll have no say in that. Why? Because we won't have a local plan. The Conservative government will not accept what the authority would do with these Conservative amendments. We will actually be absolutely naked against any developers, and in those circumstances we haven't got Pickles anymore. We've got somebody called Javid, a free marketeer in London. He will actually run riot in this town in terms of allowing developers to do the South, to lose our Ridgeway and everything else. We have got to fall in behind what Danny has actually sought to actually get as a compromise. If we don't do that, then the things that you're arguing against, particularly the Conservative colleagues, will actually all happen. We only stand a chance of some of these things not happening if we actually vote for our local plan, which I believe Epping, East Herts and Uppersford will do, and we will then have a say in what's going on. If we don't do this, we'll have no say whatsoever. Developers will come. It won't be 9,000 houses, it might be 20 or 25,000 houses, who knows? We will be naked in terms of our negotiating position. To reject the Conservatives is common sense to me. Danny, people have done a lot of work on this, and I believe some of you over there were actually engaged in actually negotiating with the local plan as well. To actually renege at this late stage is very dishonourable. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Durkin.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I think the problem with duty to cooperate is about a give and take situation, and realistically tonight is all about option 3. That's what we're all worried about, and that's what we're all concerned about. The rest is important, but the critical thing is what are we going to do with that particular area. And it does actually challenge our principles, because we've all sat here on many occasions over many years and struggled to determine what did we want to do. But there was a consensus about the fact is that our preference was for the north and definitely not the south. We did that with our former MP, we've done it with our current MP. So for us now to step back from that principle, for me personally, is a major struggle over these particular issues. And I do understand that duty to cooperate is about give and take over these issues. But if we do look at the number of areas that they're talking about, I, as the Cabinet Member for Regeneration Enterprise, had the pleasure of introducing the concept of West Sumners, and I had the pleasure of meeting quite a lot of people in the course of that consultation, and I can honestly tell you that no one was very impressed with that particular issue because of the impact it would have, not only on the Sumners estate currently, but also on the infrastructure and etc. going around it at that particular time. I have visited the Latin Priory site on several occasions and have been given tours of different levels about it. And no disrespect to my colleagues at Church Langley, but this is another Church Langley. It's going to be isolated. There is no cohesion, there is no connection, besides probably a road or something like that, between Harlow and that particular area. And that does concern me if we do believe in the given principles. We also know there's only another little area called Riddings Lane, but we also know Epping Forest, and I know there's a councillor in the audience, have already thrown out that application because it was greenbelt and because of the trees and other particular issues, and it's not, it's my understanding, it's not appealable. So even though it's in there, it's already been rejected by Epping Forest. Catherine's has always been at the background of these particular areas, but again, it's never picked up any flavour or any credibility, because it's very much a bit like Latin Priory. It's actually isolated and away from any particular community, and certainly when it was looked at, it was never viewed as anything that was favourable to Harlow. And we also have one, believe it or not, for our housing estate behind the Pinnacles. So you would have to drive through an industrial estate just to get to the local shops or to local schools and stuff like that. Saying all that, the easy option is simply to say no. But we've got to think of the consequences of simply saying no. And the difficulty is if we say no, it means that we have no influence over change and we have no challenge over those particular change. It means that we can stay at the table and argue our corner for what is right and proper for Harlow. And I illustrated that for me personally, I don't believe that any of these are suitable and right for Harlow, but unless we're actually at that table and willing to make those arguments, we lose the power of authority. Because all this land doesn't belong to us, it either belongs to Epping Forest or Essex County Council. So our sphere of influence, by just sitting down and saying no at this time, I think is a bad move. I have to say I've really struggled, and it was only because of the amendment that was put by one of my fellow councillors that I actually believe at this particular time saying yes to this proposal is right and safe, because it actually protects our negotiating position. It allows us to influence, it allows us to challenge, and it allows us to stay with our partners. But it also means very much that we have to put our trust in our leadership, our senior cabinet members, on our excellent officers to absolutely make sure that any discussions, any disclosures come back to this council for full discussion, full debate, and we make sure we get it right, because we've only got one opportunity. It's right that we get it right, and therefore I have to say reluctantly I will be supporting this, the substantive motion and rejecting the amendment. Thank you.
Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. Just speaking to the amendment, and I certainly echo 90% of what my leader said in his response to the amendments. And I certainly, for one, will not be voting for any amendment that takes away much needed social housing and affordable housing in this town. The reason and figures are there is to make sure we maximise social housing and affordable housing within the town. What I will be speaking to on October is I will be supporting the amendment to item 3 tonight from the opposition. Similar to Councillor Toll, I'm a councillor in Harlow Common Ward, and this is certainly something that certainly is a major issue within our residents. I understand Councillor Durkin's point, and he has made some valid points about, need to be at the table. But it's also about the duty to cooperate. It's also about the West Essex Alliance. I have in previous lives sat down with our neighbours and talked about these issues. I think there's common interest to move this forward. I think we can possibly move forward with negotiation, and we can possibly move forward to moving these areas around. Just this week, and I realise this is not a planning committee, and I realise this is only a proposal, but I got sent this booklet, and I know some of you may have got sent it as well, but regarding the latest, and I've stroking the word proposal, from Latin Priory. It reads like an absolute horror story for people in my ward in Harlow Common. Up to 2,500 homes. You take the average home, 2 cars per average now. 15 hectares of high quality business park and businesses. 8 football pitches. A community centre. A school. And where's it all facing? All facing into Harlow. Hardly any of this will be going out backwards into Epping. This will become an infrastructure nightmare in Harlow South. Absolutely. And we talk about, build up roads and gridlock. I think everyone will be joining me on a push bike in 10 years' time if it looks great Harlow at Staple time, because it'll be the only way that you'll get from one part of this town to another. That part of the town has not got the infrastructure to cope with any of this, and I certainly support the views of people that are also saying the same about Summers and in their ward. The only contribution that these people want to make in improving the infrastructure for this colossal proposal, believe it or not, is going to give some money to the Junction 7A, which is about 3-4 miles from the problem, not actually addressing the problems they're going to cause, and they are going to cause problems. So I will be supporting item 3. I can't support the others, as the leaders quite right and said for the various reasons. But I think that there really is a case of not being round the table and saying, let's actually have this West Essex Alliance, let's actually have the duty to cooperate and just speak with our partners and tell them, yes, you can have this, no, you can't have that. And I'm sure amongst us all we can solve this. Thank you.
Councillor Charles.
We've already heard the arguments about the lack of infrastructure that there would be to accommodate development to the west and to the south. One of the key concerns for me, though, is the provision that has been set out for the north east. An additional 2,600 homes in Harlow land to go into the north east. There's an extra 750 in Epping Forest District Council land will be plonked right on the back and in the middle of Churchgate Street. For me, that is an unsustainable development. And I would urge all councillors to actually support our amendment to 2. I think it makes perfect sense to remove the north east. I don't think it is sustainable. And when you consider in Old Harlow the fact that we already have the second phase of Newhall, the Gildon Way development will commence, the number of houses being built in Old Harlow present a real challenge if you're then going to plonk an extra 3,000 to the northeast of Harlow, directly at the back of Churchgate Street. I think that this would not be in keeping with the village community that we have in Old Harlow. Some of the other comments I wanted to raise is the development of housing within Harlow. Now, we've seen figures under the strategic housing market assessment. The first 5,100 got up to 6,500. Now we're told 9,000. To me, I think the first amendment we put forward meets the requirements that we want to deliver as an authority to meet growth needs, and the ballpark figure of around 6,000 to 7,000 homes within Harlow, I think is something that could be realistically achievable. Ultimately, I recognise that this local authority has to engage with other neighbouring authorities under the duty to cooperate. Now, I have faith in the officers' negotiating ability, once they've been given a clear steer under this full council, that they're able to punch for Harlow and defend our position and advocate the consistent approach that we've always taken to these planning matters. Ultimately, where growth is in this strategic corridor is to the north. I think we all recognise that. And ultimately, I think we must have faith in our officers in their ability to negotiate with the other neighbouring authorities to set out the infrastructure problems and requirements that actually Harlow needs. Ultimately, I think members need to think seriously about some of the amendments we've put forward. I think they are completely practical. They are consistent with existing council.
However, Amendment 3, I agree with what's been said from the party opposite. We can't change our position as expressed for a number of years on development to the south and west of Harlow. And the arguments that have been put forward are linked with duty to cooperate, in that we're going to be in a better negotiation position if suddenly we allow discussion to happen over development to the south and west of Harlow. I negotiate for a living. I don't understand the rationale. It's madness. Why would you move your negotiating stance unless you're prepared to discuss it and to have a view to accept it at some point in the future? We need to say no. Saying no isn't a weakness. Saying no is, this is the view of the people of Harlow. We are prepared to meet the numbers in the SHMAR and in the growth figures to achieve the 51,000 in the wider picture. But we don't want Latin Priory built. We don't want Sumner's West built. We don't want Catherine's West built. Find those homes somewhere else. There's developers out there that'll build them. They'll build them within the time period we need them to be built. They'll deliver the social housing. Just tell them we're not prepared to discuss them. And it's as simple as that. I know the arguments have come forward. I just don't understand them. And for that reason, I will be voting along with item 3. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank goodness for the opportunity to debate. I'm Also grateful to our leader for giving us a free vote on this matter. I believe that the proposals without amendment, to mix my metaphors, represent the slippery slope to the opening of the floodgates to housing development where it's neither wanted nor suited. Yes, there is an absolute and desperate need for housing, the right kind of housing, social housing, but more importantly, secure council housing, re-establishing the right to rent for the next generation.
Hear, hear.
But these proposals don't offer that, and don't, I believe, pave the way for that. And if we get this wrong, the consequences will haunt us for the years to come. Yes, Harlow has a duty to cooperate, and our doors have been open, our phone numbers and email addresses well publicised for a great number of years. We welcome the late arrival of our neighbouring authorities, but we do not welcome their scarcely veiled attempts to call the shots. There are some Harlow citizens for whom development to the south and the west of the town will always be abhorrent and objectionable. I am not one of them, insofar as I will never say never, but I cannot support these proposals as they stand. We have just debated an issue regarding the pressure on Harlow's roads and the need to alleviate it. Developments to the south and the west will potentially negate any of the benefits that we might secure through the new proposed Junction 7A. Show me proposals where infrastructure requirements are put in place before, ideally, or at least in tandem with developments, and we might have something to talk about. Show me proposals that prioritise Harlow's housing needs, and I'll think about it. I don't believe in running away from important decisions, and I'm truly conflicted. But at the moment, I'm inclined to agree with the position outlined by Councillor Toll. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Simon Carter.
But at the moment, I'm inclined to agree with the position outlined by Councillor Toll. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Simon Carter.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. The two motions that we've faced tonight are amongst the most important, influential, long-term decisions that we've been asked to decide on. So it's entirely appropriate that the Environment Portfolio Holder and Chairman of the Local Working Plan is here taking the lead in putting forward these proposals and presenting his group's position. The growth agenda has always been a cross-party priority, and we on this side have been involved in the working group, at least until recently. Minutes of the Cooperation for Sustainable Development Board are only available up to March of this year. Those for June and July have not been shared with us. I wonder if this is perhaps an oversight by Councillor Purton. The working group has seen the various options emerge over the last few years, until that is last week, when suddenly we were presented with a plan that nobody had seen, nobody understood, and we're almost being asked to be bound into making a decision tonight. And clearly, there are a lot of people here tonight who have concerns over that. The proposal puts forward, as we've already heard, pieces of land never previously identified in the working group, along with unsustainable piecemeal development scattered like confetti across the countryside. As the chairman of the working group, Councillor Burton will be aware that developments should be sustainable, close to existing settlements, with access to services and facilities, making Harlow a suitable place to grow and develop. The draft motion bangs on about the need for infrastructure, quite right. So it makes sense to focus development in one area, to build up a critical mass to attract services, schools, shops, etc., and to focus the infrastructure. What we have tonight is a mishmash of small developments. Each development will have their own infrastructure setup costs. Now we've been hearing members saying the important thing is to get social housing. But if the developers have to pour all their money into infrastructure, you're going to have to wait an awful long time for social housing and way beyond the planned period. With the development up to 1,000 properties, as appears on the map, they will not achieve the critical mass in the planning period. So where are the children to be educated? Where are the surgeries? Where are the shops? These will only come towards the end of the development, if at all. So we would end up with a string of half developments around the south and southwest, which will then put additional strain on existing resources, an issue which the motion is supposed to avoid. You know, the infrastructure is not going to be there, despite all the references to it scattered throughout the whole section. I'm also a little bit confused by paragraph 5 and the sole reference to junction 7 as opposed to junction 7A as well, but I understand that's just the way it reads. I'm grateful that the administration have accepted the addition of the Harlow Design Guide. This one is here, but it is rather surprising that the portfolio holder omitted it altogether, bearing in mind it is fundamental as to how we want the town to be built and incorporate the given principles. Councillor Burns has already referred to the Garden Town concept, which apparently includes the given principles, but as it's designed to cover the whole of the country, I remain to be convinced. As I said to begin with, we are almost being bounced into a plan that virtually none of us approve of. And clearly, we on this side can't support, which is why we put it forward the amendment.
It's going to make matters worse. There's a lot of space up on the northern side. Why don't we do that? And while we're doing northern side, we could at the same time try and get a northern bypass, because hopefully then the developers will give us some money. But with the Somers West and Latin Priory, especially when I received this book, I just couldn't believe what I was seeing. So there's no way I would want to compromise. So I'm sorry, Danny, I'm sorry, John, but if this paragraph will remain, then unfortunately I can't be with you on that. Thank you.
Councillor David Carter.
In this book.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Just a couple of quick points. I've done a lot of surveys recently in Southern Way, obviously for the first part of this meeting. Southern Way is absolutely dreadful. It's filled with traffic every day. It's an absolute nightmare on the road. If we're going to put more houses in Somers West, Catherine's and Latin Priory, it's going to add to that. And what?
I too agree that I will not be able to support item 3. I think it's got to be removed. For the same reasons my ward councillors have said, because we are gridlocked 3 or 4 times a week, as I've said in the first item, and have the houses that are going to go into that section, the school, etc., etc. It'll be like a little mini town there, and we're going to have a lot of that traffic coming through right the way up to Catherine's and Somers, and I cannot support that side of it. Okay, thank you, Chair.
Councillor Burton, I believe we're back to you.
Oh, right.
Sum up.
Time to sum up. Well, to deal with the amendment, which is really my task now, to address the clauses in the different parts of the amendment. The first part, I think Councillor Clem has already addressed that, so I won't repeat what he said. It's all to do with increasing the numbers in order that we can have affordable housing. We don't just want lots of big mansions, we want actually housing that suits everybody in the town, and that's why we've actually increased the numbers to over the 9,000. The second point is about removing the site to the northeast, and if like the fantasy that we can provide all the necessary growth in the north, to the north of the town. It's a fantasy. I mean, if you had gone to the presentation last week, you would have said that not only does the developers of the north of Harlow site themselves have a figure which is far below what Harlow requires during the plan period, the consultant doesn't believe they can deliver them at all. In fact, the consultant has given a much lower figure for what can be delivered on the Gilston site during the plan period. So, you know, it's a fantasy to say we don't need to develop anywhere else except we can put all of our housing that we need above that, which is being provided within the town, north of Harlow. It's just not possible within the plan period. And of course, it said that the speaker said that the development to the north east of Harlow is not sustainable. Well, having agreed with Junction 7A, I think perhaps it's a little bit more sustainable than it was before. So it certainly will have lots of highway potential. But really, the issue really comes down to, and obviously the garden town concept, you know, we've discussed that as well. The issue comes down really to the question of item 3. Item 3, remove point 3, as it's written. All I would want to say on this, and I know people have already made their mind up, so in a sense the vote, even though we haven't taken it yet, has already been decided. What I would want to say is that if you vote to remove clause 3, in other words, vote to remove, to say no to developments south and west of Harlow, even with the conditions that have been applied by the amendment, you're not actually voting against development in those places. What you're voting against is us being able to deliver a local plan. And then what will happen is the government will step in. If we can't deliver a local plan, the government will step in. They will take over our planning process. They will impose a consultant which we will have to pay for, and then they will develop this town to their philosophy, certainly not to our philosophy. So all I'd say is be very careful to understand what you're voting against. You're not voting against development south and west of Harlow. You're voting against us being able to deliver a local plan, and you're voting against us having any influence in the future development of this town. I know that sounds an exaggeration, but as far as I'm concerned, it's not an exaggeration. But I'd just like to finish on the little snidey comments from Councillor Carter, because he was actually in this room only a month or so ago when we discussed this increase in these figures and the fact that we would have to consider sites we hadn't considered before. And I remember his response. He said, well, you know, we're between a rock and a hard place. Now he says it's the first he's ever heard of them. And as for the duty to cooperate minutes, I mean, everybody knows that the duty to cooperate meetings have to be confidential. They're not open to the public for very good reasons, because we have to discuss things that councillors from other areas don't want to be made public. Otherwise, we'd never make any progress.
Right, we move to the vote on the amendment. And we take each point in turn. Point number 1, all those in favour of the amendment. Okay, against? That amendment was lost. Amendment point 2, all those in favour? And those against? That too is lost. We 3 favour?
Can we just be absolutely clear? This is not removal of number 3 in the original motion. This is 3 on the amendment paper.
That is to remove.
Yes, remove point 3.
That is to remove.
So it's
point
remove
three.
point
That's
3 in its
what
entirety.
you're
Number 9 on my schedule.
It's to remove the amended motion.
Yeah, sorry, it's to remove the amendment.
That's why I made the point.
Yes, I think we're more than
Point
Yeah, you're right. The
3
nine.
is remove point 3.
Can I
The
just
nine
ask you to read out the point that we are voting on?
It's to remove point 3.
The point that I have here, number 3 on the amendment, says it recognises the need to ensure that all proposed growth sites. Because on item 9.
No.
No,
that's the amendment.
Look on the back page of this.
It's the removal by amendment.
Yeah, it's removal step
On here.
You're reading the notes.
Yes,
Oh, it's the back.
I'm reading the copy.
No. You're given 2 pieces of paper. One was the motion, and the other was the notes explaining the motion.
So, can I just say, Chair, they're not notes explaining the motion, they're the actual amendments.
Yeah.
And amendment number 3 is to remove
Three.
clause 3 in my motion.
Which was amended.
Which is amended by Councillor Harlow. So it's quite clear. This vote is whether we agree or not to remove development to the south and west of Harlow.
Yes.
If council
Which is
says
10
the notes for clarity, that's fine. But I just didn't want anyone to be confused about what you were voting. We're voting based on the notes on removal of 3 in the original motion.
Right, all those in favour of removing item 3? Okay, that one's carried. And against?
That clearly is carried.
That one is carried. Moving on to number 4. All those in favour of amendment item 4? Against? Against lost, that one's carried. Item
against one.
It was lost, sorry.
It's been longer. Couldn't help us turn. It's been 3 hours. Yeah.
Item 5.
As amended.
Out of the amendment.
No, as further amended.
And that's amended for the amendment.
Amended on the amendment.
But it was accepted.
Law.
We accepted it. As amended.
As amended.
The amendment as amended.
Amendment and the amendment.
Again.
The amendment to the amendment.
Right, 6.
There is no more.
There is no more. No more.
You may decide to vote on by removing 3 from the substantive motion. Clearly that has an impact in terms of the housing numbers, and we will be going into the negotiation with a very clear steer, should you pass that substantive motion, that we will be opposing those sites in that duty to cooperate. That may have an impact on both the duty to cooperate and how it's operating, but also in terms of the ability to deliver a local plan that will be found sound by the planning inspector. Now, the choice is yours. It's an entirely legitimate choice for you to make, but you need to be very clear that that is the situation that you may be entering into. Thank you.
Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and I appreciate you letting me speak given the hour of the day, but it is important I thank members across the chamber for supporting my amendment to remove point 3 in its entirety. And I honestly believe that residents in Summers, Catherines, across Harlow Common, across the south of the town will be very grateful that you have done so. I think that's really important that we put that on the record. However, I cannot support the motion as it stands. Some of the minor amendments that I moved, that's fine. I cannot support it for one reason, and that is north-east, or shall I call it Churchgate North, still exists in this plan. 3,350 houses rammed on the back of Churchgate Street in Old Harlow. That to me is unacceptable. I don't see why, if we can agree in this chamber that residents of Sumners and Catherines and Harlow Common should be treated to no growth on their doorstep, that residents of Old Harlow should be treated any differently and have growth rammed down their throats. Yeah. And there is another way, Madam Chairman. If we do not accept 3,350 homes in Harlow North East, and we join them on to the currently 2,750 homes that are planned for Harlow North, that would be a total of 6,100 homes for the development in Harlow North. I'm sure Epping Forest would be perfectly happy to have their development in Harlow North. I'm sure Uttlesford would be perfectly happy to have their development in Harlow North. We would be perfectly happy. It would only mean that one member, East Herts, was not happy for the development there. We have been told that just one part of the Harlow North development could sustain 10,000 houses up to 2033. We are asking, therefore, this evening for 6,100 houses to be put in that area. That's not unrealistic. Over the following 16 years of the plan, that would merely be 375 homes per year going into Harlow North, an area that we know could easily accommodate this. Further, Madam Chairman, putting all of the growth centrally into Harlow North would develop the biggest infrastructure gain possible. We've all spoken in the previous motion on how we would love to see a Harlow Northern bypass. I can think of no better way to achieve quicker funding for a Harlow Northern bypass than to place all of the growth to Harlow North. We have a duty to cooperate, Madam Chairman. We do not have a duty to roll over and accept everyone else's growth within our boundaries. Therefore, Madam Chairman, I would urge members not to agree the motion tonight, to think again, and to go back and put the growth back into Harlow North with the support of Epping Forest and Uttlesford, pushing East Herts to the table to accept the growth that we all know is coming to Harlow North. We all know that Gilston Park is going to end up with 10,000 houses. Let's do it now and not sacrifice the green wedges at the back of Old Harlow.
I'll keep my contribution brief. Look, East Herts have moved an enormous way from an absolute rejection of any development in Gilston Park to an acceptance in their emerging local plan of 2,500 houses, and an acceptance over a longer period of absolutely right, possibly building up to 10,000 houses. But we're talking about the local plan period. It's a defined time period, and you can only physically build a certain number of houses. So to say you can only do that in one place and not accept any other development is just unrealistic. My final point is this isn't a planning committee. This isn't about approving particular sites or rejecting particular sites. That any local plan would go to full consultation in Harlow and simultaneously in Uttlesford, East Herts and Epping Forest, and before it gets for examination in public. So this is about accepting the broad principles, recognising that East Herts have moved an enormous way, that they are genuinely cooperating to meet the growth aspirations of Harlow, not just dumping stuff on Harlow's border. And on that basis, I would strongly urge members to accept the amended substantive motion, because the consequences of not doing so are to basically abdicate all our control and responsibility for what actually does get built in Harlow, and we won't like that. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Burke.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not quite sure why I've been asked to speak, but I will gladly take the opportunity. I would just like to say that planning development, as Councillor Johnson seems to think, is like pushing baked beans around a plate. It's not that at all. What we're talking about here is that these sites have all been given careful technical consideration and evaluated on a number of different scales, a number of different parameters, and they come forward and we have to, if you like, acknowledge that they are possible sites. We're not saying that they are the sites that are going to be developed. But if we say no, we're not prepared to look at any other sites apart from one huge site which, as has already been explained, is impossible to deliver over the plan period, then all we're doing is we're signalling to the inspector who will consider our plan that we're just a bunch of jokers.
Thank you. We now move to the vote. All those in favour of the now substantive motion, please show. And those against? Any abstentions? No. That is clearly carried. Should I say the numbers? It was clearly carried. Right, one item, quick item of urgent business, and that is the Book of Condolence is in the reception area if anyone wishes to sign it. If they can't wait now, it will be available in the Harvey Centre later in the week. Thank you for your patience in staying so long. Good night.